Enzo Ferrari was a man who really had a way with words. But today, two of his most famous proclamations really stand out. Firstly, I don't sell cars, I sell engines, and the rest I throw in for free. And then, of course, there's the best Ferrari is the next one. Is it though?
Because what we have here is the next Ferrari, the Luce, and this is the first one that doesn't have an engine at all. Well, not a multi-cylindered combustion one anyway. Today we're going to be driving a late-stage pre-production car to find out whether the lack of traditional mechanical sensation means that some core Ferrari DNA has gone missing. One thing though, we filmed this drive in April, before the Luce was unveiled to the world. In fact, look, there's me a few weeks later in Rome, sweating under a giant glass roof while Top Gear and the rest of the world's automotive media tried to process what they'd just seen. We'll unpick the reaction to the Luce in a moment, including the billions that wiped off Ferrari's stock valuation. But in case you missed the Luce the first time round, here's a reminder of the key information.
So, quick recap on the specifications. Obviously, a brand new electric architecture, totally bespoke, full of proprietary tech that Ferrari has developed itself. 4 electric motors, 1 on each wheel, 1035 bhp, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds, top speed of 192 miles per hour, claimed range of 330 miles, and it weighs 2,260 kilograms, which isn't that bad for a 5.1 meter long, 5-seater EV. It's also got a lower center of gravity than the Pura Sangue, and that's because 85% of the battery cells are stored within and fixed to the floor pan. The remainder are stored behind the rear seats. So if you were expecting, I don't know, a cross between Ferrari's SUV and maybe the GTC4 Luce, I'd say think again. But the real surprise here is the focus on usability and versatility. There's room on board the Luce for 5 full-size adults, and as you can see, a pretty large boot as well. So take those elements together and the fact that it's an EV, so it needs to be very aerodynamically efficient, and the result is a spaceship shape and some rather unusual surface language.
The surface language and the interior is the result of Ferrari's collaboration with LoveFrom, a creative agency founded by former Apple Chief Design Officer Sir Jonathan Ive and industrial designer Mark Newson. Obviously, it would be another few weeks before the huge global reveal in Rome, and we know what happened after that. An internet and social media pylon of cosmic proportions. But in the same day that I drove the prototype, Ferrari ushered me into a secret room with a full-size design reference model of the car and let me have at it. So forgive the rather unvarnished first impressions. There was a lot to absorb.
Does it look like any Ferrari you've ever seen? The whole idea is that it sits completely apart from the mothership in parallel, but you know, there's maybe, well, let's go and have a look at it. I mean, there's a badge on it, but honestly, if you took the badges off, would you go, yeah, that's the new Ferrari? It's completely different. So it's done by Jony Ive and Mark Newson and the team at LoveFrom, mainly in San Francisco. They were contacted, I think, in 2019 or 2020 by John Elkann, who's the, well, what is he, the CEO and president of Stellantis, but also executive chairman of Ferrari. He knew Jony and they said, we're going to do an electric car. Do you guys want to design it? Both inside and out. And here we are. It's difficult to know where to start with this car, but I think, well, I mean, look at the front end. And in fact, let's look at the A-pillars and the windscreen and the way it flows in an almost, there's a tiny step, a little bit of an angle here, but the front of the car is effectively under here. And the way it's been explained to me is the area that we see here in this sort of baby blue color. I can't remember, it's a zero something in Italian. As you can see, this section envelops the whole car. And the area that's in black is kind of like a car within a car. And it's most apparent here, I think. You'll notice that these wipers, yes, these are windscreen wipers. And they actually, everything these guys do, and you will have seen it if you have Apple products, they pay attention even to tiny screws and screw head details. They are detail obsessives. So in an automotive application, I mean, pantograph wipers, the wipers They don't sit here as they would in a normal car. They're here at the side. I think a lot of people are going to have a bit of trouble with that. But what this does is clean up this area. I mean, normally the area where the bonnet, or this isn't really a bonnet, there's no frunk in here. This area is just devoid of any of the nonsense that you normally have. There's no, plastic bed or the lip on the edge of the bonnet, the motors for the wipers. It's all cleaned up.
Now, we will allow ourselves a little retrospective moment here. In the aftermath of the unveil, the internet pointed out in its usual cam-measured fashion that as Seat managed to hide the wipers and the A-pillars on the Altea, why couldn't Ferrari? It's to do with maintaining the correct aerodynamic flow across the bonnet, if we can call it that, while minimising cabin noise. By the way, the Luce's drag coefficient is 0.25. That's impressively low. Right, back to that design model.
I really am slightly fascinated by this kind of car within a car concept. So the DLO, the daylight opening, the glass house, whatever you want to call it, that's obviously all in black. This is a sort of flying bridge. It's carbon fibre actually, and you can have it finished in carbon fibre if you want. They are talking about perhaps painting it body coloured, but would almost make it look like a Targa, 911 Targa, Porsche or something. But this area here, again, car within a car, kind of flows down here, and this whole section here, obviously we've got some cooling area here, a little bit of they used to call this a gurney flap, like an older in Italian, a bit of a spoiler. That's an aero function as well, but it's this whole area that kind of exists within the wider form of the car. I mean, it's a Ferrari. Have you ever seen a Ferrari that looks like this?
Nope, we haven't, and it seemed to fry pretty much everyone's minds. As if an electric Ferrari wasn't bad enough for the non-believers, the company had the temerity to outsource the design to an agency that completely reimagined what a Ferrari could be. Sacrilege, apparently. Even the mainstream news media started reporting on this drama as billions were wiped off Ferrari's share price. Of course, the share value soon bounced back, but they didn't mention that. Even ex-Ferrari boss Luca de Montezemolo decided to take a pop at the Luce, but then he didn't want to do the Pura Sangue either, or introduce sat-nav to Ferraris for that matter, so the Luce was hardly going to float his boat, was it? Even an audience with the Pope couldn't quell the rage. So the exterior ruffled a few feathers, to put it mildly, and there's no doubt that it's polarising. Still, I think the interior is easier to get your head around.
All right, I think much depends on how much of an Apple fan you are, exactly what level you're going to enjoy what I think is the best car interior in the world. I really do believe that. It's so elegantly executed. There's a sense of calmness around the whole Luce project, I think. There's a little more calm going on in the exterior than you might expect, although it does look like a bit of a spaceship as well, with all those intersecting areas and negative space and so on. But it's when you get inside, there is no higher quality interior than the one that we have here. The steering wheel is, I think there's 19 separate pieces of CNC aluminium in here. The rim is exactly the right thickness. The wheel is a callback to 50s and 60s Ferraris, and yet it feels fully modern as well. This is how we cycle through. So we have range, tour, and performance for all of us who are sick of low quality, crappy switchgear in cars or badly executed haptics. This one is for you, if you can afford it, of course. One of my favorite details is this is the E-Manatino. This will be familiar to anyone who's driven a Ferrari or read about it or watched a film about it. It alters the chassis setup, obviously. But on the Luce, as you cycle through, so from wet to dry, it bathes the main instruments in a different color. So when you go to dry, it's a kind of green. That's beautiful. And the OLED display, which is from Samsung, is so cool and so clever that just the quality of that light in itself, that illumination, is incredible. But this is the mark of the genius of these guys, is that light decays slowly. It just gradually fades away. You go to sport, and it's a kind of warm orange, and it's just slowly fades away. And then ESC off, and we start with Ferrari red, I guess, or Rosso Corsa of some sort.
Such heady praise for a set of digital dials might seem sycophantic to some of you, but you need to remember the scale of Sir Jony Ive's contributions to the wider culture and world of technology, the impact he's had upon literally billions of people through his time at Apple, the same attention to detail that effectively created a template for the smartphone that every device follows to this day. That's now being trained upon the Ferrari Luce. It's very good in here because the people behind it are also very, very good. The rest of the interior is equally impressive. The three-spoke wheel is a deliberate callback to Ferrari's past. A substrate spans the length of the dashboard. It's machined from a solid piece of aluminium rather than being pressed, so there's no bend radius to it. The central infotainment screen pivots towards the driver and has, praise be, physical switchgear and a multigraph inspired by the aviation world. The air vents are simple but brilliant and beautifully done. The centre console has the same Gorilla Glass that you'll find on an iPhone.
Jony Ive's big thing is that even if you can't see something immediately or obviously, you can sense when people have taken care over creating a product. This interior is absolutely spectacular. The LoveFrom team have, pushed the boundaries, gone for something pretty different here. And I think it's fair to say that the Luce exists in parallel with the mothership's model lineup rather than being integral to it. It stands apart, and that's the idea. But is it any good? Well, the challenge of delivering an EV, according to Ferrari's chief technical officer, is that it opened up a whole new world of dynamic experimentation. The solutions the engineers came up with are closer to aviation and aeronautics than the traditional car industry, he added. Ferrari is obsessed with innovation, and it owes it to itself and to all of us to embrace change. Besides, the company will still sell you cars with a V6, V8 or V12. This is good. This one just happens to be electric, but it also turns out that it's every millimetre a proper Ferrari.
A reason for that is for all the independent control that 4 electric motors might give the Luce, Ferrari has kept the R&D programme firmly in-house. Its long-standing chief test driver is Raffaele Di Simone, and he's the man who's led the team responsible for the likes of the 296 Speciale, the F80 and many more over the years. Ultimately, the Luce has to feel like a Ferrari, just one that happens to be electrified.
I guess is it your job, Rafa, to kind of transform the ones and zeros and the empirical data into emotion, into human emotion, into responses at the wheel.
And something
and your right foot.
Easy to understand. Easy to understand. Because in the last 100 years, technology has changed quite a lot. I mean, we're doing a Ferrari EV power-trained, so things are changing for sure, Jason. But what we did not change is our body, we have 2 hands, we have 2 feet, and we have 2 eyes, 2 ears.
Yeah.
So the commands remain the same on the Ferrari Luce. We just create a different level of driving emotion and a different way to enhance the driving thrills through your commands, which are always a steering, brake pads behind the wheels, pads on braking system and throttle. So the interface are the same, but we had to create completely new interface that creates the driving emotion we need and we think is our interpretation of an electric Ferrari.
So Rafa's the human control at the heart of the development program, and the Luce has got the low centre of gravity and the trick suspension and rear wheel steering that can disguise weight and deliver impeccable body control. But what about that more subjective feeling, the one that the driver gets behind the wheel of a new car? Ferrari has a few tricks up its well-upholstered sleeve here. The main thing is called torque shift engagement, and it effectively delivers engine braking and increased driver interaction via 5 steps in the power and torque curve. So the Luce doesn't just gather momentum relentlessly in the usual hyper-fast EV way. It allows the driver to set it up for cornering entry, apex and exit as you would in a combustion car. Well, almost.
Oh my goodness. Now we're cooking. I wondered what had happened to him, but he's just woken up.
First, now I'm okay because the radius changed, so I can deliver more, and more.
Jeez,
okay.
Okay. Yeah, this feels like a Ferrari. Oh, body control.
If you need more engine brakes, according to the radius, you can use more, and the car use engine brakes. So you can decide how much you want to roll into the corner like a traditional ICE.
I understand it now.
So to me, this is a second, because the radius is medium, I want to keep it in. If I want to deliver more on the exit, in here, again, second, because the radius is medium. If you want more power on the exit,
A lot of grip
you
there.
can play. You are also helped by the graphics, because it goes to. Oh, okay. It says if you are pushing, it also tells when the right shifting moment comes. But since we are not limited like a normal ICE and gearbox architecture to a rev limiter, you can also keep going with that torque index.
And what about the noise? Well, this is a biggie for Ferrari and for all of us, because these guys have created some of the greatest sounding cars ever. This one can't compete with a V12, how could it? But it's new and different. There's no movie soundtrack style stuff or fake noise going on here. I spoke to a guy called Antonio Palermo, who led the 20-strong team tasked with making the Luce sound cool. There's an accelerometer on the inverter casting on the rear axle, which picks up the powertrain frequencies and amplifies them. Yes, like an electric guitar. Ferrari experimented with 50 different pickup points before choosing the best one. The sound is also instant and changes according to torque demand, whether you're accelerating or using the regen. Very clever.
The other chance to play with the sound is like, you see, like a tuk tuk.
Yeah.
This is sound on, back to drive, no sound. In, out.
Yeah.
Okay, because in drive is supposed to be
And it's instant.
you're off until a certain level of driving, sporty driving.
Yeah.
But also, if you want to do crazy thing, you can. And the car is heavy, 4 engines,
Yeah.
but
Oh, look at that.
still
It
driven
does drift.
like a car.
Good Lord.
Whoa!
That's pretty cool.
Okay, so all the car is a Ferrari. Okay, is just powered by electric motors, but it's a Ferrari.
You had to do that, didn't you?
Right, my turn. And for some reason, Rafa didn't want to ride shotgun. Instead, he bravely put forward Francesca Minci Grucci, the vehicle dynamics manager, and a very, very clever woman indeed.
It slides like a Ferrari. Oh dear. Not that many of the people who buy this car will drive it like that, but boy, it's good to know it can do it.
Yeah, it's good to know that you can do it. And then at the end, our development phase were always the same. I mean, no matter if it's an EV vehicle, as Raffaele was saying, we would like to provide the driving thrills as standard Ferrari, So
Yeah.
that's why we develop also this kind of architecture. You have more degree of freedom to fulfill.
And that sound, it obviously doesn't sound like a combustion engine.
No.
But it's almost like you would imagine the Ferrari of EVs to sound. And even that, when I get a bit aggressive on the accelerator pedal,
Yeah, the gas pedal, yeah.
it mimics it perfectly. Just Feel it. Can feel it loading up a bit there.
Every 200 times per second we decide the proper torque allocation. So means that you can every 5
So
milliseconds choose the proper torque to be provided.
So controllable. I'm amazed at how good that is. It's like driving a normal fast Ferrari. So much detail. Sorry,
No
on the
problem.
brakes quite hard there. Body control is terrific. So good on the brakes as well.
Yeah, we have the third generation of active suspension here.
Yep.
So this really helps a lot. And then, as Raffaele was saying, even the mechanical part, it's really improved thanks to the fact that we have the battery on the floor of the vehicle. And also means that the center of gravity is lower.
Yeah.
And the inertia.
You can tell.
Yeah, and then this is a big advantage from the EV architecture.
Yeah. I don't think I've driven an EV that handles as well as this.
So that's a tantalising first experience of the Luce, but enough to show that it's extremely fast, has exemplary body control, and can change direction with amazing accuracy. Ferrari's mastery of software is now almost as total as its ability to create a world-class chassis, so we probably shouldn't be too surprised that the Luce behaves like it does. Sure, it's no 296 Speciale, but how could it be? Actually, it feels closer to an electrified Pura Sangue. That car also rides amazingly well on its 48-volt suspension and controls its mass brilliantly. And the Luce feels like a step on from that, an electrified step on. But look, if you're not interested in that, not even a Ferrari is going to change your mind.
Yeah, that's brilliant, that car, isn't it? Very good.